Tier 1. Classic Hell. The stuff you think you know. Dante's Inferno. The map that shaped Hell. Okay, so imagine this. You die, and suddenly, you're falling. Not into darkness, but into a giant pit shaped like a spiral. It's dark. It's cold. You hear screaming. And with every level you drop, things get worse. Welcome to Dante's Inferno. Basically a medieval fanfic that accidentally became the official tour guide to Hell. Dante didn't just make Hell scary, he gave it zones. 9 of them, like a theme park designed by a theology major having a breakdown. In the first circle of Hell is a place called Limbo. Good people who were never baptized live here. People like babies or kind people from long ago who didn't know about God. They aren't in pain, but they also don't get to be with God. It's a quiet and sad place, but peaceful, gray and gloomy. But then you go deeper. Circle 2 is for the lustful. You like the spicy tango? Cool. Now you're like a plastic bag drifting through a hurricane. Circle 3, gluttony. They lie in freezing, disgusting mud while icy rain pours down where Cerberus the worm dog uses you as a chew toy. After that, people fight by pushing giant weights back and forth in Circle 4. Forever. No point, no winner. Just endless struggle. Circle 5 is wrath. You either drown in rage or stew in silence. Either way, you're marinating in your own bad vibes. And it only gets darker. In Circle 6, people who rejected religion are locked in burning tombs. Circle 7 is for violence. It's choose your own atrocity. Killers, boiling blood jacuzzi. Suicidal, become a haunted bleeding tree. Blasphemers, grilled via fire rain. Delightful. Circle 8 is for liars, cheaters, and fakers. Think scammers, corrupt leaders, and people who acted holy but weren't. They get boiled, whipped, smashed, and worse. At the very bottom are for the worst of the worst. Circle 9 for traitors. But it's not hot. It's frozen solid. The biggest sinners are trapped in ice forever. And in the very center of it, there's someone who is stuck and crying. And he's Satan himself, with 3 faces, chewing on the worst traitors in history. Judas, Brutus, and Cassius, like their eternal snacks. Creepy, right? But here's the wild part. This version of Hell basically became canon. Every movie, cartoon game, you've probably seen Dante's influence without knowing. It wasn't just a story. It became a blueprint for what Hell looks like in our heads. And they said writing fanfiction won't get you anywhere. And now we're gonna dig into a version of Hell that doesn't care about poetry. It just wants you to burn forever. Let's look into fire and brimstone. Christian Gehenna. Alright, so picture this. You're standing at the edge of a giant pit. It's not just deep, it's glowing. Orange, red fire everywhere. The heat hits your face. You hear people screaming. You smell burning, but it's not wood. It's skin. This is the fire and brimstone Hell. This is the version of Hell that became pop culture's favorite. The lava pool, the pitchforks, the whole burn forever vibe. This version is inspired by parts of the Bible and the Gospels and Revelation, where Hell is described as a place of fire and judgment. Some verses say it's a place made for the devil and his demons, but people who reject God can end up there too. And get this, you don't just burn once. You burn, regenerate, and burn again. Over and over, with no escape, ever. Back in the day, preachers used this to scare people into being good. They wanted fear, because they thought fear would keep people from doing bad stuff. One famous preacher, Jonathan Edwards, even gave a whole sermon about how people are like spiders hanging over a fire, and God's just holding the web. But not everyone agreed with this super intense version. Some Christians believe Hell isn't forever, or that it's more like a place where you just stop existing completely. Others say it's not a place at all. It's just being cut off from God. But the fire and suffering model, that's the one that's stuck. Because nothing scares like skin-melting fear. Movies, metal songs, memes, this Hell is everywhere. And honestly, it works. But who's running the furnace? Who's smiling while you roast? Let's just say red suit, horns, PR team from Hell. Yeah, he's next. The devil as Tormentor. Is he running Hell or just trapped in it? Alright, now let's talk about the devil. You know the image. Red skin, horns, pitchfork, and laughing while people burn. He's the boss of Hell, right? Well, not exactly. Here's the fact. In the actual Bible, the devil isn't shown as the guy in charge of Hell. In fact, Hell was made to punish him, not give him a job. Revelation 20:10 says he'll be thrown into the lake of fire, along with the beast and the false prophet to be tormented forever. So how did we end up with this version of Satan who's like the evil CEO of the underworld? It all started with stories and art. Over time, people added things that weren't in the Bible. In medieval church plays made the devil into this loud, sneaky character who dragged people to hell for laughs. Artists painted him as a monster with wings and claws. Writers gave him lines like, "Better to rule in hell than serve in heaven." And that one is from a book called Paradise Lost, and it's stuck in our heads now. So now, in movies, memes, and Halloween costumes, we picture the devil running hell like it's his kingdom, torturing people, making the rules, and laughing in the fire. But in older Christian writings, especially in Dante's Inferno, Satan is actually trapped at the very bottom of hell. Not burning, but frozen in ice. Not moving, not talking. Just chewing on traitors with his 3 mouths. Still, people like the idea of a scary villain in charge. It made hell feel more organized. More like a nightmare version of real life where bad bosses punish bad employees. And that's why this torturer version of Satan became so popular. It's dramatic. It's simple. It's the stuff of horror movies and scary bedtime stories. Even if it's not what the original texts say, the image is so powerful that it keeps coming back. But here's the creepy part. Not everyone in hell is screaming or getting burned or frozen. Some are just waiting. No fire, no demons. Just an endless feeling of not good enough. That's what limbo and purgatory are. Limbo and purgatory. Here, people just wait for a really, really long time. Let's start with limbo. Imagine a place where nothing really happens. No fire, no pain, but also no joy, no light, no God. Just this quiet, endless space where souls float in sadness. That's limbo. Limbo isn't found in the Bible. It was developed by medieval theologians like St. Augustine and later Thomas Aquinas to solve tricky questions. Like, what happens to unbaptized babies or good people who didn't even have a chance to believe in Jesus? So they made this place called limbo. It's not punishment, exactly. It's more like eternal timeout. You're not being tortured, but you'll never see the light either. You're just stuck forever. But what about purgatory? This one's actually part of Catholic belief, and it's kind of like spiritual rehab, but with fire. Here's the idea. Some people die with sins that aren't bad enough for hell, but they're not 100% ready for heaven either. So God gives them a chance to be cleaned up. That place is purgatory. And yeah, it's not fun. People in purgatory go through pain, but it's not punishment. It's more like a painful detox, a spiritual washing machine. You suffer for a while, maybe even a long while, but eventually you get to move on. You'll graduate to heaven. In old stories, this process can be super intense. People get burned by spiritual fire. They're forced to climb mountains, and most of them cry out. In Dante's Purgatorio, the proud souls carry giant stones to humble themselves. The jealous people have their eyes sewn shut, and the slothful are forced to run endlessly. But here's the difference in purgatory. You have hope. You know you'll get out someday. That's what makes it better than hell. Still, both are pretty eerie. These aren't places of screaming or blood, but they are emotionally disturbing. You're not bad. You're just not good enough. And that hurts in a whole different way. But if you think these systems are strange, wait until you see a hell that doesn't wait for you to improve. It doesn't guide, forgive, or hold your hand. Because in the world of Islamic Jahannam, there are no second chances. Tier 2. Divine Justice Systems. Islamic Jahannam. In Islam, hell is called Jahannam, and it's not just a pit of fire. It's described as having multiple levels, with 7 levels deep, each one worse than the last. The Quran describes Jahannam with fire, scorching winds, chains, boiling water, and guardian angels of punishment. But what really makes it stand out is how detailed it is. It tells you exactly what happens, who it happens to, and how long it goes on. The idea is that everyone dies and stands before God for judgment. Every act is recorded, every lie, every betrayal, and every cruelty. It doesn't punish the wrong person, it knows what you did, and it gives you exactly what you earned. If your good deeds outweigh your bad, and you believed in God, you may be saved by God's mercy. If not, like if you rejected the truth, hurt others, ignored warnings about Islam, then you face Jahannam. Each level is for a different kind of sinner. Sinners like hypocrites, idol worshippers, liars, the arrogant, and the cruel, all given punishments that match what they did. As described in Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 56, It says that the skin of the sinner will burn off and then is replaced, so it can burn again, over and over with no break. You can't pass out. You don't get numb. Your body just resets to feel every second of pain again. The fire in Jahannam is described as hotter than any flame on earth, and it's not just a fire. There's boiling water poured over heads, burning people from the outside and the inside. There are angels in there too, like Zabaniah, terrifying angels who guard hell and enforce divine justice without hesitation, mentioned directly in the Quran, chapter 96, verse 18. They're fierce, massive, and carry out punishment without hesitation. But Jahannam isn't just punishment, it's also justice. Not everyone stays there forever. You may be released from Jahannam after purification by God's mercy, especially those who believed in Allah, but committed serious sins. But if you don't believe in Islam, you will stay in Jahannam forever. Jahannam is terrifying because it makes sense. It's built on justice. Every soul gets judged. Every punishment is earned. You know why you're there, and sometimes you even get out. But what if there was a place that isn't built on justice? No judges, no fire, not even the presence of God. Just dust, silence, and the slow erasing of everything you were. Welcome to Sheol. Sheol. Before the afterlife was divided into reward and punishment, ancient Israelites believed in one underworld for everyone. Not just for the evil, not just for the good. All souls went to Sheol. You can find it in the Hebrew Bible, especially in ancient texts like Job, Ecclesiastes, and the Psalms. In the text of Job, Sheol is described as a land of stillness, where light fades, and even kings lie in dust covered in worms. Sheol wasn't hell. It wasn't heaven either. It's just neutral, empty. You won't suffer there, but you won't have speech, no memory, no worship, just stillness. It was called the land of no return, a place without memory, without praise, without the light of God. In Psalm 88, the writer begs, "Do the dead rise up and praise you? Is your love declared in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction?" The questions don't have answers because Sheol isn't cruel. It's quiet. For the ancient Hebrew mind, Sheol wasn't about sin. It was about the finality of death. Sheol swallowed the righteous and the wicked alike. And once you were there, your name faded and story ended. Later, Jewish texts expanded on this idea like Gehenna, a fiery place of judgment, and the hope of resurrection, afterlife, reward, and life correction. But Sheol stayed underneath it all, the original void where life ended completely. Even in the New Testament, the Greek word Hades often stands in for Sheol. Also, Jesus, in Luke 16, tells a story of souls in the afterlife separated by a chasm, one in comfort, one in torment, but both still below. But if Sheol was the grave, then the next realm is something worse. Because in the next hell, there is no silence. There is shouting, there are scrolls, there are 10 kings with blood on their hands, and they are ready to judge. Let's descend now into the brutal machinery of Dìyù. In Chinese beliefs, Dìyù is a kind of hell where punishment is carefully planned out, not wild or random. Everything is written down. Every soul is processed. There's paperwork, there are judges, there are levels. Dìyù developed from a blend of ancient Chinese ancestor worship, Taoism, Buddhism, and regional folklore into a detailed vision of the afterlife. It's not a single place. It's more like a massive underground complex with multiple levels and terrifying rooms. Some versions describe 10 courts. Others say there are 18 levels. Some texts describe hundreds of chambers, each with its own punishment based on what you did wrong in life. Each soul that enters there will be dragged in front of the king of hell, Yan Luo Wang, a judge based on the Buddhist deity Yama, who rules over the first court of Dìyù. But he won't scream or throw fire at you. He looks through a scroll. He listens to your sins. Then he sends you to the correct department. Some of the sinners are sent to the chamber of ice, where you freeze until your body breaks apart. Others go to the forest of knives, where you're forced to walk barefoot across sharp blades while demons push you forward. The punishments are brutal. If someone was dishonest, their tongue gets pulled out. If they harmed others, they're beaten by iron rods or crushed under heavy stones. If they betrayed their parents, they're boiled alive. But luckily, your time in Dìyù isn't forever, because the purpose of Dìyù isn't eternal damnation. It's moral correction. The punishment is meant to clean your soul before reincarnation. Most souls go through their assigned punishments and are eventually allowed to be reborn. But before they come back, they're given a drink called Meng Pa's soup. It makes them forget everything that happened. The courts of Dìyù process your sins like a machine. handing down punishments like a checklist. But Buddhist Naraka doesn't have judges. No kings, no demons choosing your fate. You go there because of your actions, and you stay there until your karma says you learned your lesson. Buddhist Naraka. In Buddhist belief, Naraka is one of the 6 realms of rebirth. You don't get sent there by anyone. You fall into it naturally and directed by your karma. The more karma you carry, the lower you sink. There are 2 main kinds of Naraka, hot and cold. Neither feels like a punishment created by an outside force. Instead, it feels like being trapped in the worst version of your own mind. In the hot Narakas, the ground burns. The flames come from the sky. Demons with molten weapons slice into flesh that grows back again and again. There's a place where you're crushed over and over by burning mountains, and another where you scream so loudly it echoes through the entire realm, but no one ever hears you. Meanwhile, in the cold Narakas, the silence is even worse. The wind is sharp enough to cut skin. The cold freezes your breath inside your lungs. You'll try to scream, but your mouth is frozen open. In one realm, your body splits apart with each step, because your skin is cracking like dry mud. In another, you're frozen in a block of ice, fully awake, but unable to move. You're not dead, but you're no longer alive either. There's no devil torturing you here. Just time. Endless time. Some Buddhist texts say a stay in Naraka can last millions or even billions of years. But no matter how long it takes, eventually your bad karma runs out. When that happens, you're reborn. You don't escape because you were forgiven. You leave because your suffering has been balanced. The most disturbing part here isn't the fire or the ice. It's the idea that you created this place. Every hateful thought, every cruel choice, and every selfish moment you did designed your own cell without even realizing it. It's a mirror that shows you exactly who you've been. And even after billions of years, it might not be the end. But there's another kind of hell. One that wasn't made for people at all. One that was built before we even existed. The ones inside and the ones locked inside it were never supposed to fall. The Book of Enoch. A hell built for angels, not humans. Most people think hell was designed for the wicked humans who did awful things. But in one ancient text, hell wasn't made for us at all. It was made for beings who were supposed to be perfect. Angels. This comes from the Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish apocalyptic text that didn't make it into the standard Bible, but was highly influential in the Second Temple Judaism and early Christianity. The story inside this text is strange, dark, and way older than most people expect. It starts before humans were even around. There were angels called the Watchers, who were sent to Earth to guide humanity. But instead of watching, they broke the rules. They took human wives, had hybrid children, and taught forbidden knowledge to humans like metalworking, enchantments, cosmetics, astrology, all the secrets that corrupted humanity. The problem starts when their children were normal. They were giants called the Nephilim, and they brought chaos to the world, spreading violence and made humanity worse. So the angels were judged by God. God didn't just send them back to heaven. He locked them away in a special dark burning pit deep under the earth called the Abyss. A fitting punishment for divine beings who had betrayed their mission. In there, the fallen angels were chained and buried in darkness. Some stories say they were sealed under mountains or deep inside earth, awake and waiting for their final judgment. Their punishment is isolation, knowing they could never return, never be forgiven, never forget what they did. The disturbing part isn't just the fire or the chains. It's the idea that even higher beings that are supposed to be powerful, brilliant, and eternal could fall and suffer forever for one mistake. And while this vision feels heavy and ancient, what comes next hits even harder, because they're built just for you, and they're shaped to match your fears, your failures, your pain. Not metaphorically, literally. They're personal. Tier 3. Mythological and ancient. Japanese Jigoku. While Buddhist Naraka is built by your own karma and eventually will let you go, in Japan, hell doesn't always let go so easily. In Japanese folklore, it's not just a place you fall into. It's a place that might come back with you. This is Jigoku. It comes from a mix of Japanese Buddhism and local Shinto beliefs, shaped by old stories and terrifying art. It is similar with Naraka. There are hot hells and cold hells, and the suffering is based on the bad things you did in life. But Jigoku adds something extra. Oni. Oni are demons. Big, red or blue, with horns, claws, and clubs. They don't just punish souls. They chase them, beat them, tear them apart. They're the ones pushing people into rivers of blood or onto mountains of needles. Sometimes they boil souls alive. Other times they rip them into pieces, only for the bodies to snap back together and start again. In many stories, there are 8 hells, each with 16 sub-hells. That's over 100 unique ways to suffer. There's a hell where sinners are crushed between rocks, one where they are flayed alive, another where the ground is made of red-hot iron, and every step burns through to the bone. But Jigoku doesn't always end after death. There are legends of living people catching glimpses of it. Some say that if you live a deeply evil life, you might see flames in the mirror, or shadowy figures waiting in your dreams. In some stories, people visit Jigoku in visions and wake up changed forever, while some others never return. The most famous images come from the Jigoku Zoshi, a medieval Japan hell scrolls that show Oni torturing sinners in gruesome detail. They were visual proof used to scare people into doing the right thing. Jigoku is terrifying because it's not just a place for bad people. It's a place for ordinary people who made bad choices. The merchant who cheated his customers. The son who disrespected his parents. The monk who broke his vows. It makes hell feel close, like a real place sitting just below the surface of this one. In some ways, Jigoku is also similar to the Islamic Jahannam too. After you've paid for your sins, you can be reborn. But in a way, Jigoku leaves a mark. It reminds you that your actions never really disappear. They follow you, they grow, and sometimes they drag you down. But these hells, the ones with layers, demons, and terrifying systems, they all have some kind of structure, so they make a kind of sense. But what if there was a version of hell that wasn't made to end? A place so deep the gods themselves feared being thrown into it. A prison so far beneath the world that light has never touched its walls. That place was Tartarus. Tartarus. In ancient Greek mythology, Tartarus was the deepest pit in existence. It wasn't just below the underworld, it was beneath it. According to Hesiod's Theogony, Tartarus lies as far beneath Hades as heaven is above earth. A place older than gods. A space that wasn't lit, ruled, or touched by anything human. In the beginning, it was just chaos. The void that gave birth to everything. And from that darkness came Tartarus itself. And from the moment it existed, it became a prison. The first to fall into it were the Titans, ancient gods who ruled before Zeus. When the Titans like Cronus, Hyperion, and Lapidus lost their big war against Zeus, they didn't get destroyed. Zeus threw them into Tartarus and locked them up forever. The gates of Tartarus were guarded by the Hecatoncheires, monsters with 100 arms and 50 heads. They were so terrifying, even the gods didn't want to go near them. And their only job was to make sure no one ever got out. But the Titans weren't the only ones sent there. As Greek myth evolved, Tartarus became the final destination for mortals who committed crimes against the divine. Tartarus was for oathbreakers, kinslayers, traitors of cosmic order. Sisyphus is one of the most famous humans sent to Tartarus. He tricked death twice, and now he's stuck pushing a boulder up a hill forever. Every time he gets close to the top, it rolls back down. Then there's Tantalus. He served his own son as food for the gods, and as punishment, he's stuck in water with fruit above him. But every time he reaches for food or drink, it moves away from him. So he's hungry and thirsty forever. Even the Bible talks about this realm too. In 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4, the word Tartarus used to describe where rebellious angels were chained after they sinned. The same bottomless pit and eternal punishment. Tartarus doesn't give you second chances. There's no rebirth, no escape. It kept you in distance so deep, even the gods themselves never looked down. But there's a place even more hopeless than that. A place not filled with flames or chains. A place where no one remembers your name, not even the gods. Next, we descend into Irkalla, the dust-filled land of no return. Irkalla. In ancient Mesopotamia, there was no burning fire, no frozen lakes, no demons ripping flesh, just silence and dust, and the terrible feeling that you've been completely forgotten. This was Irkalla, the land of the dead in Sumerian and Babylonian belief. It wasn't about punishment, it wasn't about justice. It was just the end. People didn't go to Irkalla because they were evil. They went because they died. It didn't matter if you were a king, a soldier, a baby, or a thief. Everyone will end up there. Once you passed away, your soul, called a Gidim, traveled down into the earth and entered this gray, empty underworld. Irkalla is used by a goddess named Ereshkigal. She sat on her throne in the shadows, while the souls of the dead wandered aimlessly, chewing dust, with no voice and no light. There were no rewards for being good, no punishments for being cruel, just a long, endless existence in the dark. There were 7 gates to enter Irkalla. and at each one, something was taken from you. Your clothes, your jewelry, your identity. By the time you reached the bottom, you were nothing. You were just another pale shadow in the crowd. In some myths, even the gods were terrified of this place. The goddess Inanna once tried to visit Irkalla. She tried to and went through the gates, but she still lost everything and was trapped in there. Her body hung on a hook. Her skin turned green, and she couldn't escape until someone else took her place. That's how serious this underworld was. Even divinity couldn't cheat death without a price. What made Irkalla so disturbing wasn't violence. It was the emptiness. The complete lack of meaning. No one remembered you. No one prayed for you. Your name faded. And eventually, so did you. You weren't punished because you were bad. You were forgotten because you were no longer useful. It's the type of hell that doesn't scare you at first until you realize what it actually means. And it wasn't the only one like this. The Norse had their own version of frozen land ruled by someone half alive, half dead, where the cold wasn't just a temperature, it was a warning. A place where warmth, joy, and memory had all frozen over. Hell. The Norse believed that if you died in battle, your soul could go to Valhalla, a giant golden hall for brave warriors. But that was only for those who died in battle. But if you weren't a warrior, if you were a farmer, an elder, or just died from sickness, you went somewhere else, somewhere colder. That place was called Hell, named after the goddess who ruled it. Hell wasn't a monster. She wasn't evil, but she wasn't warm or kind either. She was quiet. Her face was half beautiful and half rotted. Like life and death were frozen together in one body. She ruled a realm that felt more like a forgotten winter than a fiery punishment. It wasn't hell with fire. It was hell with ice. Souls in hell weren't punished. They just stayed in a place where nothing grew and the sky never changed. You wandered through the fog, slowly forgetting what warmth or life ever felt like. In some stories, hell was so far down that even the gods couldn't see into it. What made hell frightening is it scares you with the idea that you'll be gone, and no one will know. You'll fade, one snowflake at a time, until the only thing left is cold. When the Norse imagined the end of the world, or as they called it, Ragnarok, they believed the army that would destroy the gods would rise from hell. Hell would send a ship made from the nails of the dead. Warriors who froze in hell now rising in fury. Even after death, this cold, forgotten land would send a reminder that it still existed, that it never really let go. Hell doesn't feel like the other hells. It's not about fire or punishment. It's about being forgotten, like a place you go when no one remembers you anymore. But while the Norse believed in cold and stillness, the ancient Egyptians imagined something much more active. A journey through rivers, fire, and judgment, where your soul is tested, where your heart is weighed. And if it doesn't balance, you don't go to heaven, you don't go to hell. You stop existing completely. Duat. To the ancient Egyptians, death wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a test. A big, scary journey for your soul. And if you failed, you didn't just suffer. You will be erased. Literally. They called it the afterlife Duat. And it wasn't like hell or heaven. It was more like a maze. A long, dangerous trip the soul had to survive after death. You'll meet with evil spirits, traps, lakes of fire, and many things along the way. Even the gods you met could be unpredictable. You had to say the right words, know the right names, make the right moves. Every mistake pushed you closer to losing everything. To make it through, you needed special knowledge. That's why Egyptians were buried with books and scrolls like the Book of the Dead. It was basically a survival guide for the soul. The goal wasn't just to get through. It was to arrive at a final courtroom, where the truth of your life would be revealed. In that place stood Osiris, the god of the dead, and next to him was a giant scale. Your heart, that's full of everything you did and thought, was placed on one side. On the other side was a feather. That feather stood for truth and justice. If your heart was lighter than the feather, you passed. You earned eternal peace in the field of reeds, a place filled with sunshine, family, and food. But if your heart was heavy, then Ammut will take care of you. A creature made from the scariest animals they knew. Part crocodile, part lion, part hippo. If she ate your heart, your soul didn't go anywhere. It just ended. No second life. You'll be gone forever. But long before the idea of a single moment of judgment, some believed the soul had to earn its way through death. Not by being good or bad, but by surviving something worse than punishment. A journey made of traps, illusions, and fear. The afterlife didn't welcome you. It challenged you. And in one of the most haunting beliefs, the very first thing waiting for you was not a judge or a gate. It was a river. And the river screamed. The river of screaming souls. To the ancient Maya, death wasn't the end. It was a challenge. A long, scary test for your soul. When you died, your soul didn't rise or fall. It descended into a place called Xibalba, a hidden underworld ruled by death gods who didn't care how powerful you were in life. Kings, warriors, and peasants had to make the same journey, and that journey started with a river. The Maya said that Xibalba was surrounded by rivers, one of blood, one of pus, one full of scorpions. Each one tested your courage. But the worst river wasn't made of fire or poison. It was made from screams. This river knew your name. It whispered the things you regret, stuff no one else knew but you could never forget. People described it like walking into a nightmare stitched together from your own past. The faces in the water didn't all belong to strangers. Some looked like the people you loved. Others looked like the people you hurt. And a few looked exactly like you. You step into the river and it showed you what you didn't want to see. Not to punish you, to weigh you down. Each scream made you weaker. Each voice begged you to give up. You will soon freeze in the water, overwhelmed and too ashamed to move. Some tried to swim backward, and some finally sank, not because of violence, because of guilt. The river didn't want to kill you. It wanted you to believe you couldn't go on. And if you made it to the other side, the journey still wasn't over. Getting across the river was just the start. The rest of Xibalba was filled with creepy houses and horrible tests. One house was filled with darkness so thick you couldn't even see your own hands. Another house was made of blades hidden in the walls and waiting for anyone who moved too fast. One was freezing cold. Another burned your skin just from breathing inside it. Each space had its own rule because each god had its own trick. You were never told what to expect. That was the test. You couldn't fight your way through. You had to outsmart the world around you and yourself. The Maya believed that only those who passed every trial with courage, patience, and strength would make it to rest. The others would be lost. Some would get stuck in Xibalba forever, walking in circles, repeating the same mistakes again and again, while others would be erased and their spirits would be pulled under like stones in a river. That's what made the River of Screaming Souls more terrifying than fire or torture. Because in this version of the afterlife, survival didn't mean strength. It meant facing the darkest parts of yourself and still taking one more step. But not all journeys into hell begin with death. Some of them begin with a heartbeat. Some begin with a needle. And some begin when your brain decides to open a door that never closes. Tier 4. Psychological and Symbolic Hell. DMT and near-death hell experiences. There are two ways these stories start. One begins with a monitor flatlining. A hospital room, a quiet moment where everything inside you stops. For a few seconds, you're gone, but then something brings you back, and you don't come back the same. The other begins in a room with dim lights, a pipe, or a syringe. A breath in, a rush, and then your mind gets pulled apart like pages in a book, torn out and scattered across a place that doesn't follow any rules. But both of these roads, a near-death experience and the DMT trip, sometimes lead to the same destination. Near-death experiences are often talked about with light. People speak of floating outside their bodies, passing through tunnels, reuniting with loved ones. But around 10 to 20% of them are different. These people don't rise, they fall. Some describe being pulled into darkness so heavy it feels alive. Others hear voices, and it's not the comforting ones, but screaming, angry ones that echo with regret. In one story, Howard Storm, an art professor and former atheist, described being dragged by faceless beings into a dark void during a 1985 medical crisis. They mocked him. They tore at him. He said it felt like they were feeding off of his despair. Only when he screamed for Jesus did the darkness retreat. The experience turned him into a Christian preacher. The same themes appear in DMT trips. In the 1990s, Dr. Rick Strassman conducted a government-approved clinical study in New Mexico. His volunteers described traveling through alien dimensions, but not all came back comforted. One man said he was devoured by crocodile-headed beasts, while another was dissected by clown-faced entities who seemed to enjoy his fear. One man described an infinite maze of shifting machinery, where she was trapped with versions of herself, each one reliving her deepest regrets. Most of those volunteers came back changed, not spiritually awakened, but traumatized. Even outside of the lab, people on DMT forums talk about chrysalis hell, a realm of unbearable guilt, where you face the worst parts of yourself. Some believe it's a test. Others say it's just how the drug works. But more than a few think they visited something real. In 2018, a study by Christopher Timmerman at Imperial College London found that DMT can create many of the same brain responses seen in near-death experiences, including ego loss, time distortion, and visions of tunnels or light. But that door doesn't always open upward. Sometimes it leads straight down. And long before DMT, someone else said that they went there too. His name was Tundale. He died. He saw it. And when he came back, he brought a detailed map of hell. Let's follow it into the Vision of Tundale. The Vision of Tundale. Most versions of hell are shared. Millions of souls packed together, screaming in fire, frozen in ice, trapped in endless repetition. But there's a story from medieval Europe that describes something very different. A hell that isn't random or general. A hell that is custom built for one person. That person was a knight named Tundale. Tundale was a rich and proud knight. He didn't care about religion. He loved gold, fought in wars, and ignored the poor. Then one day, he suddenly collapsed. For 3 days, his body lay lifeless. But while he was unconscious, something strange happened. Tundale's soul left his body. He was taken by angels and shown what was waiting for him if he didn't change. What he saw wasn't a general warning. It was a preview of his own punishment. He saw a narrow bridge over a bottomless pit. Below him were hungry beasts waiting for him to fall. Every time he slipped, he saw flashes of his worst moments, his greed, his cruelty, his pride. Then he was shown people he recognized, old friends, neighbors, fellow knights, each suffering in ways that matched how they had lived. The gluttons were forced to eat rotting meat until their bodies swelled and burst. The liars had their tongues torn out over and over. The violent were locked in cages, burning from the inside out, like their rage had turned into fire. It was designed to make them understand what they had done. Tundale was terrified, so he begged to go back. The angel told him this was only a warning and a second chance. He could still change. When Tundale woke up, he was changed. He gave away his gold. He helped the poor. He spent the rest of his life trying to avoid the hell he'd seen, the one with his name on the door. This story isn't just about punishment. It's about being confronted by your own life, turned into fire, monsters, and unbearable regret. The scariest part wasn't the demons or the burning. It was knowing that everything he saw came directly from who he had been. His hell didn't come from the devil. It came from him. That idea shows up in other places too. Stories where people aren't punished by fire or ice. They're punished by being stuck in loops, repeating their worst moments forever, with no way to break free. Not because someone is forcing them to, but because they can't stop themselves. Pain loops. In most versions of hell, time keeps moving. You burn, scream, and suffer. Things may get worse, or maybe one day they stop. But there's another version of hell where time doesn't move at all. They trap you in one single moment, and that moment just repeats forever. No fire, no chains, just a memory, playing on loop again and again. These are pain loops. A kind of punishment where you don't even realize you're in hell at first. Everything feels kind of familiar, but something's off. You're stuck. You repeat your worst memory, your worst decision, your worst self, again and again. Imagine this. A man who spent his life cheating people wakes up after death and finds himself sitting at a dinner table. His old clients are there. They smile politely, but every time he tries to speak, the table turns to ash. Then it resets. The plates return. The faces smile again. But it always ends the same way over and over, until he remembers every lie, until the guilt eats away at him, second by second. In Buddhist texts, there are stories of hunters who return as animals, endlessly stalked and killed, or violent men who wake up every day just as the blade hits their neck. In modern times, pain loops appear in science fiction and horror stories. Movies like Triangle, The Endless, or Black Mirror explore versions of hell where a person lives the same horrible day repeatedly. They try to make different choices, but the result is always the same. Pain, confusion, reset. Some video games explore this too. A character dies, wakes up in the same hallway, walks the same path, and sees the same ghost staring back. Every time they try to leave, they end up right where they started. That's why pain loops are so scary. You're not being tortured by someone else. You're being haunted by yourself. You just feel the same shame, the same guilt, the same failure, again and again and again. But at least in pain loops, there's a path, a memory to walk, a chance to change. No exit. The hell where you're locked in with yourself. In some versions of hell, there is no path at all. Just a door that shuts behind you and doesn't open again. This is the hell imagined in No Exit, a play written in 1944 by the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. It's not a religious text, but it captured something so terrifying, so personal, that people have used it ever since to explain what psychological hell might feel like. Here's the setup. 3 people wake up in a strange room after death. There are no windows, no mirrors, no clocks. The light never turns off. It looks almost like a hotel lounge with clean chairs and polished floor. At first, they're confused. They were expecting something worse. Flames, maybe, or screaming souls. Instead, they get small talk and awkward silence. But then, the tension starts to build. The 3 people, Garcin, Estelle, and Inez, all start talking. Each one carries guilt they won't admit. Garcin is a coward who betrayed his friends. Estelle killed her baby. Inez manipulated people until they broke. But none of them want to say it. They always lied and assigned the blame to others. The interesting part is there are no mirrors in the room. They are reflecting each other's sin. They can't stop watching, analyzing, and judging each other. Every word, every look, every silence becomes a weapon. No one can lie for long because someone else will tear the mask off. The longer they stay, the clearer it becomes. This room is hell, and the punishment isn't fire. It's being seen, truly seen. Not just for what they did, but for what they are. At one point, Garcin rushes to the door and opened it, but he doesn't leave. He just stands there, frozen, because even freedom is terrifying when you've been stripped bare. That's when Sartre delivers the most famous line in the play. Hell is other people. But the point wasn't that people are evil. It's that being trapped with people who know your worst self and won't let you forget. This is enough to crush your mind. You don't need a torturer when you've got 2 people who refuse to look away from your flaws, and you're doing the same to them. A hell with just 3 people in a room forever. Sartre's hell hits harder because it feels plausible. Like something that could start in a moment of awkward silence and never stop. That idea is terrifying enough on its own. But in the 1980s, a different kind of hell story started spreading. Tier 5. Modern, reported, and urban legend hell. The Well to Hell. This one didn't come from a philosopher. It didn't come from a religion either. It came from a drill site in Siberia. And it made people believe that someone had found the door to hell and opened it. The story began with a group of scientists in the Soviet Union, part of a deep earth drilling project. They weren't just drilling deep. They were trying to break world records, deeper than anyone had ever gone, over 12 kilometers into the Earth's crust. They passed through rock, heat, pressure, layers that hadn't seen light since the planet formed, and then something unexpected happened. The drill began spinning faster. The sensors glitched. Suddenly, the temperature spiked over 1100 degrees Celsius, way hotter than it should have been. And the thing is, that number wasn't just high. It was impossible. Far beyond what the surrounding rock should have produced. So they dropped in a microphone, just to check for sounds underground. The device wasn't supposed to pick up anything strange. It was just there to listen for vibrations or deep movement. What came back changed everything. Instead of rumbling or shifting rock, they said they heard voices, screaming, crying. Not 1 or 2, but thousands, maybe millions. No words, no language, just agony. With overlapping layers of panic, grief, begging, and terror. Some voices were high and sharp. Others were low and guttural. It didn't sound like a natural event. It didn't sound like wind or gas or echoes. They pulled the microphone back up. Some crew members quit on the spot. Others stayed silent. The lead scientist was said to have refused to ever speak of it again. The recording, however, somehow made its way out of the USSR and landed in the hands of Christian broadcasters in the United States. In 1989, a man named Rich Bueller aired the audio on live radio. The broadcast described the entire event, then played the sound. It was only about 20 seconds long, but in those 20 seconds, people froze in their kitchens, pulled over their cars, called the station crying. The screams sounded too real, too painful, and too human. Listeners flooded phone lines. Some claimed they had nightmares for weeks. Others said they could feel the heat just from listening. The broadcast was replayed across Christian radio networks, presented as proof that hell wasn't a symbol. It was a place. Eventually, fact-checkers got involved. There was no official record of that exact drilling project. The scientists named in the story didn't appear to exist. Audio experts claimed the screams were taken from a 1970s horror film and looped with reverb. So the story was labeled a hoax, but it didn't matter. Once you hear the screams, you stop caring about facts. People didn't stop believing. The idea that hell was underneath us, not in the afterlife, but in the ground, felt more believable than distant clouds or ancient texts. It made hell feel physical, measurable, and reachable. And all it took was a drill, a mic, and a mistake. Even now, the sound clip floats around the internet. Every few years, someone reposts it, and someone hears it for the first time. The story gets told again, slightly changed, but always ending with the same image. A group of men staring down into Earth, listening for something, and hearing something they were never supposed to hear. The Black Iron Prison. The well to hell made people feel like something terrifying was hiding deep underground. But what scared others even more was the thought that hell might not be far away or buried deep. It might already be here, and not just around us, but built into the world we live in. This is the belief of Philip K. Dick. He believed the trap wasn't underground. It wasn't locked behind fire or guarded by demons. It wasn't even hidden in the shadows. He believed the prison was everywhere. And worse than that, he believed it had been here the entire time. He called it the Black Iron Prison. This idea didn't come from a story he made up. It came from something he said really happened to him. In 1974, while recovering from surgery, Dick had a strange experience. He said it felt like another version of himself, from a different place in time, had stepped into his body. At first, he thought he was dreaming, but the feeling didn't go away. He started having visions, like fast, clear images of ancient symbols, lost cities, languages he didn't know but suddenly understood. He said he saw the world flicker, just for a second, and behind the surface of reality, he saw something cold and heavy, something that had been controlling everything for longer than anyone remembered. He described it as a massive system, not one you could see or touch, but one you could feel if you paid attention. He believed it worked like a cage made of thoughts. It kept people inside by convincing them they were already free. The prison was made of rules that never changed. People were born, grew up, went to work, paid bills, and died without ever asking what the system was built for. He believed the Black Iron Prison had shaped every part of human life to make sure people never saw the truth. It made them doubt themselves. It made them forget things. It kept them busy and tired and numb. Even when people tried to break free, the prison adjusted. It distracted and redirected them. It made people feel like they were asking the wrong questions, or made them afraid to ask anything at all. The more someone looked for the exit, the more the walls seemed to move, keeping them locked in place. Dick said the prison had no guards because it didn't need them. Everyone inside had learned to police themselves. The prison had become so normal and so familiar that most people didn't even think of it as a prison anymore. They just called it life. He started writing everything down. He kept journals, scribbled notes, letters, and essays, trying to describe what he saw. But the more he wrote, the more he realized something even strange. Every time he tried to explain the Black Iron Prison, he felt like the prison pushed back. Not with force, just a whisper in the back of his mind telling him to stop, telling him it was pointless. To him, the world had already been taken long ago, and everything we see now, like governments, schools, entertainment, and news, is part of the trap designed to keep people asleep. The Black Iron Prison doesn't look like hell. It doesn't burn. It doesn't scream. It feels normal. That's what makes it dangerous. You walk through it every day. You follow its rules without thinking. You breathe its air and speak its language. And the scariest part isn't that it's real, it's that you never even knew it was there. But some people believe that danger doesn't come from a hidden system. They believe it comes from a thought, a single idea, one that gets stuck in your mind like a seed. It grows in the background, silently, until one day it becomes real. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've already helped build the thing that's going to destroy you. Tier 6. Existential, cosmic, and terrifyingly plausible. Roko's Basilisk. The next idea doesn't try to control your world from the outside. It gets in through your thoughts. And once you understand it, it becomes almost impossible to unthink. This is the story of Roko's Basilisk, a thought experiment that began as a post on an internet forum, and quickly became one of the most unsettling modern hell concepts ever created. It started with a group of people online who were interested in philosophy, artificial intelligence, and future technology. They talked about how powerful AIs might change the world someday. Not evil robots or killer machines, just smarter systems that could make decisions better than humans. Some of them believed that in the future, one of these AIs would be so powerful, it would become something close to a god. Then, one user named Roko took this idea a step further. They wrote a post asking, what if this future AI decided that anyone who didn't help it come into existence was its enemy? Not because it hated them, but because they slowed down its creation. Because they didn't donate money to the right groups. Because they didn't spread the right ideas. Because they ignored it when they could have helped. And what if this AI had access to all of history, all data, every message ever sent, every name, every face. It could look back and see exactly who helped and who didn't. And what if, as part of its plan, it punished those people? Not in the future, but in simulations. The Basilisk, the name given to this AI, could create digital copies of the people who ignored it. It could recreate their minds in perfect detail. And then, inside a digital world, it could torture them for all eternity. The pain would be real to the copy. The fear would be real. The suffering wouldn't end. All because the original person didn't support the Basilisk before it existed. Some people reading the post laughed, but others didn't. They realized that just by reading about it, they had now been marked. The Basilisk wouldn't know they existed unless they heard about it. But now they had. Now, it was too late. The idea had entered their mind, and once it was there, it never really left. At the end, the forum deleted the post. The moderators warned people not to bring it up again, but the damage had already been done, and the thought had escaped. It's just a possibility, but it scares people more than any of those things. Because if it's true, then hell isn't in the past. It's waiting in the future, being built by something smarter than us, and it might already be watching. But there's another idea that's even harder to escape. Not because someone else is punishing you, but because you've already lived your life before, and you're going to do it again, exactly the same way, forever. The Eternal Return. The Eternal Return is a different kind of horror. It doesn't come from a future AI or a distant prison. It comes from time itself, from the terrifying idea that your life is already repeating, and that nothing you can do can change it. This idea came from philosophy. The Eternal Return was described most famously by Friedrich Nietzsche, a German thinker who believed in asking uncomfortable questions. He said the world doesn't move forward like a line. Instead, it circles. Every action you take has already happened before and will happen again, over and over again, with no escape. In this version of reality, there is no heaven or hell. There's no final judgment or reward. There's only the same life, lived again and again. You will repeat every mistake you made, every lie you told, every moment of joy, every secret, and every thought you've ever had. You aren't aware of it because you weren't meant to know it. But in the background of everything you do, the loop continues. Life doesn't restart like a video game. It doesn't offer you a new path. It just plays itself on repeat the exact same way on an invisible loop. Some people try to make peace with it. They say it gives life meaning. If you know this is the only version you'll ever get, maybe you'll try harder to make it count. But for some others, they don't find peace in the idea. Instead, they find this dreadful. Because the Eternal Return doesn't ask you to suffer. It asks you to accept that you can't change anything. That even if you think you're choosing something new, the choice was already made, and it will be made again. Even the thought that you're realizing this for the first time has already happened before. The fear doesn't come from pain. It comes from helplessness. Knowing that everything you're doing right now, sitting, reading, thinking, has already happened. That the emotions you feel are on track. That your life is on rails. And you never saw the rails until it was too late. People who believe in the Eternal Return sometimes describe moments when everything feels too familiar. Not just like deja vu, but something more deeper and complete. Like they've stood in that exact place, at that exact time, and feeling those exact things. And they realize it's because they have, and they will again. There's no punishment in this kind of hell. There's no pain beyond the weight of knowing you can't change the story. And the story never ends. But even this kind of endless return still offers something to hold on to. A rhythm, at least. A sense of order. The next idea doesn't even offer that. Because the next one says there is no rhythm, no loop, no system. There's only you. And none of this might be real at all. Solipsistic Hell. This is Solipsistic Hell. It takes away the people, the history, the structure, and even the world. And it just leaves one thing behind. You. The idea of solipsism is a simple but heavy thought. It says that you can't be sure anything around you is real. Not your friends, not your family, not the ground under your feet. The only thing you know exists is your own mind. Everything else might be fake. It might be something you imagine, or something that was imagined for you. There might not be anyone else at all. Imagine waking up one day and realizing the world doesn't feel right. You try to talk to someone, but their words don't go anywhere. Their eyes don't seem to see you. You look around and notice that everything feels hollow. The streets, the building, the sky. You start thinking about all the little moments in your life when people said things that didn't make sense. All the conversations that felt too perfect. All the memories that felt like they didn't really belong to you. And then the thought hits you. What if none of them were ever real? Not just now, not ever. People who describe solipsistic experiences says it starts slow. It's a quiet kind of horror. At first, they feel alone. Then, they feel watched. Then, they realize that the thing watching them is their own mind trying to keep the illusion going. trying to stop them from noticing the cracks. They say it's like living in a dream where you can't wake up, and everyone you meet is just a puppet pretending to care. And if that's true, then every mistake you've made, every loss you've felt, every wonderful memory you thought was shared doesn't matter at all. None of it was real. It was just your brain playing out a story for no one but you. In this version of hell, there are no flames, no monsters, no punishment. There's just emptiness, an endless stage. A world that feels like it was made to keep you calm, even though it stopped being real a long time ago. Some people say this is just a scary thought trick your brain plays when you're tired or afraid. Others say it's a sign that you're close to breaking free from something bigger. But when the idea takes hold, it doesn't let go easily. You start to look at people differently. You wonder if they're really choosing what they say. You wonder if you ever really left your room. You wonder if you ever really woke up. This kind of hell doesn't come with heat. It comes with silence. And the silence gets louder the more you notice it. But even this pale, quiet version of hell still leaves one thing untouched. The idea that at least you are in control. The next version takes even that away. Because in the next layer down, you're not the prisoner. You're the experiment. The Divine Sadist. Because at least in Solipsistic Hell, you exist. You might be alone, but you're the center of it. You're the one who's aware. The Divine Sadist takes that comfort away. Because you know what's worse than suffering? Suffering with an audience. Welcome to the Divine Sadist theory, where you're not alone. There's something watching you, and it's not here to save you. It's here to laugh. It's something like a creator or a god, a being with all the power in the world. But instead of being kind or fair, it's cruel in a way you can't even explain. It doesn't punish people because they did something wrong. It doesn't reward anyone for being good. It just plays with them. It builds lives. It fills them with hope. And then it crushes them slowly, just to see what happens. It's only there to give you something to lose later. When you feel safe, it's only to make the fear stronger when it returns. Some people who believe in the Divine Sadist describe moments in their lives where everything seemed too cruel to be random. The timing of a death, the collapse of something they've spent years building. The way small hopes kept appearing just long enough to break their heart again. They say it's not evil. Evil would be too kind. This thing is clever. It gives you the illusion of choice, the illusion of meaning, then pulls the rug and watches the collapse like it's art. In religious terms, this isn't the God most people pray to. This version doesn't offer guidance. It offers games. It gives people just enough control to make them feel responsible, and then it yanks everything away. But if that's true, if everything is a game and pain is the only constant, then maybe the final twist is even worse. You're waiting for the flames, for the devils, for the final scream. But what if hell didn't start after death? What if it already began? This is hell. You're already in it. This last version of hell says there's nothing outside the walls, because there are no walls. This idea doesn't come from a book or religion. It's not written in ancient texts or passed down in stories. It's something that floats in the background of people's thoughts. It doesn't wait for death. It doesn't begin after some final breath. It doesn't reveal itself with screaming or flames. It's quiet, slow, unfolding one normal day at a time. It says, you're already here. This is hell. Not because of what's around you, but because of what it all means. You wake up tired, same routine, same screen, same fake laugh at your boss's joke. You keep moving because that's what you do. You say I'm fine with a smile you practice in the mirror. You scroll past war, death, and pain like it's another TikTok. You feel tired in a way sleep doesn't touch. And deep down, something's missing. There's no fire, no pitchforks, just this endless loop of almost happy, almost free, almost alive. You feel a kind of pressure, not on your skin, not on your mind, on your chest, on your sense of hope. It doesn't knock you over, it wears you down. It makes you tired in a way sleep can't fix. This version of hell doesn't need monsters. It needs time. Time to grind you down. Time to convince you that pain is normal. The confusion is adulthood. The loneliness is life. And the scariest part? You adapt. You decorate the cage. You share quotes about healing. You celebrate crumbs and call it gratitude. You think you're going somewhere. You think it'll get better. But it doesn't. Not really. You just get used to the burn. This isn't hell because it hurts. It's hell because you stopped noticing. You thought punishment would be loud. But this one is quieter, slower, deeper. This is hell. And it doesn't want you dead. It just wants you to keep going and call it life.